You're listening to the Plain Talking UK podcast, the UK-based podcast written by a passenger for anyone. And here are your hosts, Carla Stebbings, Matt Smith and Neville Bounds.
Well, hello and welcome to episode number 215 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carl Stebbings, and joining me in the barn studio this week, as always, is my co-host Matt Smith.
Indeed. Hello, everyone. I
broke it abrupt.
Sorry. I tried to do something and it
abrupt.
didn't work. I'm sorry.
Were you playing?
Yes,
during the opening credits for the show?
I was playing during the opening credits. I'm sorry. So there we are. That's it. Sack the producer.
Right.
Lovely. If anybody else would like to have a go, by the way, this seat is always available. Please, someone else sit in this seat, please.
And also joining us this week from his big sprawling mansion estate, it's our awesome other co-host of the show, Mr. Neville Bounds.
Good evening. Hope everybody is well. Yep. And it's been one of those weeks again, very hectic. A bit late in joining today, but it's one of those.
You wouldn't have it any other way, sir. You like to be so crazily busy you don't know what to do with yourself.
Yeah. So, no, looking forward to the show. Lots to talk about on this week's show. Lots of stuff going on.
Stuff. I like stuff. Stuff is good.
And also joining us in the barn studio this week, a real treat for everyone, especially my wife Gemma, because she loves him. He's back again with us, and it's our special guest host of the show. He's the prince of everything to do with the passenger experience. It's Eoin.
How you doing, guys? How are things? Good to be back here in the studio. Thanks for having me back.
So you back for the bank holiday weekend then, Eoin? No flying or?
No, I'll be flying the bank holiday. I will be flying the bank
back to
holiday.
work Sunday.
Oh
yeah,
no, where are you off to? Anywhere nice?
I think I'm actually going to Dublin on the bank holiday.
On the Monday.
On the Monday, I think.
Okay.
I am. So that'll be good. I like the Dublin flights. It's good to get back
nowhere
home.
sunny then.
No, sadly not.
It might be sunny in Ireland. You never know.
Oh, I doubt it.
And
it doesn't really happen.
And also joining us on the show this week, another guest host. I mean, we're spoiling everyone this week. We really are. And he is. It's safe to say he's the man who puts the redness into APG and the amazingness into.
Is that because his beard makes him look like Santa?
I know. And he's also counting down the days until he is free from flying. It's Captain Nick.
Ho, ho, ho. Hello. Plain Talking UK, you wonderful guys. Great to be on your show. Thank you very much indeed. I was getting really bored with APG. This makes a
yeah, whatever.
makes a fine break.
How's the countdown timer going, Nick? 'Cause I know you've got this. You've got a kind of countdown of how many days you've got left.
Well, if you'd given me a moment's notice, I could have pulled it up.
Yes,
He
does that a lot to people, by the way. I wouldn't feel too.
Am I allowed to say that? And show you. In fact, I'm just firing it up right now. It's getting to some interesting numbers.
Is it?
Yes, it certainly has. We've through the 500 barrier. Now 492.
So it's literally just like
his last day at work. Oh wow!
Okay.
492 days, which I might add is only 70 weeks. Not quite so good on the hours.
Right, it's a bit frightening on the hours.
1,812 hours.
Okay.
But the seconds are looking fine. Only 42.5 million seconds.
Lovely. Right. Okay. Well, on the plus side, the seconds are going down every second, I suppose. So
they're going down quite quickly.
So welcome everyone who's joined us in the live chat room on YouTube this evening. It's the 4th of May, 2018.
May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th. Oh,
you see what I did there?
I hate that. So it's been all day at work. I'm a Star Trek man, not a Star Wars man.
You could be both, you know.
Okay. So, welcome everyone who's joined us in the chat room.
Someone you have.
It's we've got another APG host in the chat room. Dr. Steph's in the chat room. We've got Liz Piper in the chat room.
Is she now off doing another marathon?
She's probably doing a marathon now.
Yeah, probably.
Andy Furlong, Neil Landwall.
To be fair, Nick is about to do a marathon because he's doing APG straight after this. So.
We've got Mariana in the chat room as well. We've got Jenny Parkinson. She's Jenny.
Joining us from Jenny. We shall see you very soon. Hang on, yes, Jenny. We will see you very. Which where's my?
The camera's there. Honestly. Anyway, carrying on. We've got Lane Street.
I'm not very good at telly.
Lane Street is also in the chat room. David Corsten's in the chat room. Hello,
David.
David. Hope you're well, David. We are just scrolling up the list here. Ivor McDonald as well. He's joined us in the chat room.
Now, I saw in the BFS chat actually that he's not been able to make a live show before, and he's actually managed to make a live show today. So welcome, Ivor. Well done.
Yeah. And previous guest on the show, Stephen Ivey. He's also in
the legend
in the chat room. Hopefully, he's not flying while watching the show. He could be though. You never know. You never know. So welcome to everyone who has joined us today. So we've got loads of news stories this week to get through. We've also got a nice, fresh, new Nev's passenger experience.
Fresh out of the can.
Fresh out of the can. Absolutely. And Nev's going to bring that to you later on the show. But we have got loads of news to get through, so we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if you're ready, Matt.
I'll why not? Yeah, I'll give it a go.
If you're ready, Nev.
Yes, definitely.
If you're ready, Eoin.
Ready as I'll ever be.
Captain Nick.
I'm ready, except did you realise tomorrow is the Revenge of the 5th?
Oh, I like it.
Let's go.
Thank you, Stephen.
So, kicking off this week's first news story. I'll turn his mic down. I've got the control here to turn his mic down.
Not for much longer, you haven't.
And this one is on the skift.com website. This is going to be obviously very sad news for Captain Nick here for this first news story. But Qantas is the latest major global airline to give up on the Boeing 747.
But so, Nick loves that aeroplane so much.
I know. Aviation nerds surely will be upset. Qantas is retiring their Boeing 747s. The aircraft's been the world's most iconic jet for decades. But times are changing and airlines now prefer more fuel-efficient twin-engine jets. Sadly, only a few airlines, such as British Airways, Lufthansa, Korean Air and Air China, seem committed to the aircraft beyond 2020.
They need to be committed.
I know.
Love it.
And funnily enough, you've got to subscribe to read the rest of the story, which
didn't
tell me that earlier when I actually had this story up for the first time.
No, I've got it here without signing up.
Oh, carry on then. Without, it's just,
where do we start?
Oh, here we go. So another major global airline is planning to retire its 747s for a new generation of aircraft. Qantas is going to retire its last Boeing 747-400s by 2020.
I assume that is actually a picture of a 747.
Yes, the really old one. That's an SP,
there's hope.
That's your 747 SP.
Yeah, special performance.
Not many of them made. It was scrapped in June 1996.
Yeah, and it's a slough.
I beg your pardon.
A slough. A short, little, ugly...
Oh, okay, right. Lovely.
Anyway, moving on.
Moving on.
So the aircraft retirements and replacements are the latest in a series of changes at Qantas over the last decade from Irish CEO Alan Joyce, who has turned the airline from a laggard into a top performer.
A what now?
On Wednesday, the same time Qantas announced the Boeing 747 retirements, it told investors to expect a full-year profit of between 1.55 billion Australian dollars and 1.60 billion Australian dollars for the current fiscal year, despite facing a major increase in its fuel bill. Well, that's going to be better now because they're getting rid of the 747s. But having improved the airline's financial health and its stock price up 443% since mid-2012, Joyce is focused on using the newest planes to break some of the last frontiers in aviation. No airline has ever regularly flown from Australia to London because no aircraft could do it, including the Boeing 747. But the 787, obviously another fantastic Boeing product, has changed that. It's not perfect for Qantas because it still doesn't have the range to fly from Qantas's hub Sydney to Europe, but it can fly from Perth, which at least for now is close enough. The flight takes 17 hours, give or take a minute or two depending on the winds, and the 787 is about 20% more fuel efficient than the 747, and maintenance costs less according to Qantas. By the end of 2020, when the just announced Dreamliners will have all arrived, Qantas will have 14, enough, the airline said, to add new destinations in the Americas, Asia and South Africa and Europe. Over the years, each new version of the 747 allowed Qantas to fly further and improve what the was offered to passengers, Joyce said in a statement. The Dreamliners are now doing the same thing. Qantas now has 10 Boeing 747s, and they fly to routes like Brisbane to Los Angeles to New York, and eventually Qantas would like to drop the Los Angeles stop, but that's not going to be possible with the Dreamliner. Qantas will need an even longer range aircraft to fly non-stop from Sydney to the eastern United States, and it has challenged Boeing and Airbus to build a plane capable of flying 20 hours by the year 2022.
We have a slightly disgruntled listener.
Why is that?
Poor Jonathan Warner was about to sit down to enjoy watching today's show because he's got an opportunity to do so. And unfortunately, just as he fired up his PC, I should stress, he fired up his PCC. Nev is already sighing. This popped up on his screen while he was doing it. So he reckons he'll be joining us in about 45 minutes anyway. That's
optimistic.
Indeed.
Going back to the story there, is there actually
just like a Boeing?
Is there actually a market for people who want to fly 20 hours?
Well, we covered the story last week, didn't we? Because it was it Singapore, Nev? Last week, who were going to do the 20-hour flight. They'd kind of got that with the A350-9-900. But yeah, do you not fancy 20 hours or 17 hours?
Well, no, I do.
Yeah, I know. Well, I know I do.
Many of us do here, but I am sure there.
I'm going to disagree with you heavily there.
No,
I can't
Matt,
think of
Matt would in business class.
Yes, I could probably handle it in business class.
As would Nev in first class, obviously.
Of course, absolutely.
I think the big difference is that if you don't, then you've either got to kick around some airport in between for 3 or 4 hours while they refuel the aircraft, or perhaps move you onto a different aircraft, change the crew over, etc. Or you spend a day or two there, which can be very nice if you're on holiday, but if you're trying to get from A to B
business
quickly,
and stuff,
then it's no use at all. It's much better to suffer the 17 or 20 hours or whatever and get off and go straight to hospital with your DVTs.
Always the optimist. Yeah.
Yes. Could it be because it's a Boeing product we're talking about? Perhaps that's where he's going with it. Anyway, we're going to move on before we get to
story 2.
Yeah, the Living Daylights out. And rather unusually, this isn't a Ryanair story, which I'm
continue reading, Matt.
Oh, is it? Do you know, I thought for a brief moment there I'd been spared, but apparently not. So this is on the Telegraph website, and the headline is it's telegraph.co.uk. Sorry, I must remember we must always name check the website. The one mistake to avoid, this is on Telegraph, if your hand luggage gets relegated to the hold. Now I see. Passengers have been warned to keep their passports with them on flights when their bags are put in the hold at the last minute, or face lengthy delays at border control. Do you know, I hadn't even given that a thought. And a couple of times I've handed over my bag, and of course it's been my
passports in your hand luggage.
They are supposed to tell you when you hand over your bag to remove any batteries that might explode.
Okay.
Make sure that you've got any medication you take out of it, and have your passport. So you're given a reminder. It's all supposed to be. As you hand your bag over, to take anything out of it that you will need during the flight or immediately after landing.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Which airline didn't tell you?
Continue, Matt.
I can't tell you.
I thought we were an aviation podcast.
We are indeed. All right, EasyJet, if you must know. But anyway, okay. So more and more travellers are having to having their carry-on bags taken off them at the gate, as airlines struggled with limited space in overhead cabins before takeoff. But the change in routine is catching out passengers who find themselves at passport control at their destination with no way of retrieving their documentation. One holidaymaker who asked to remain anonymous told the Telegraph Travel that he was detained at border control at London Stansted Airport and had to phone a friend to collect his bag from the carousel and return to the passport kiosk. He was on a Ryanair flight with a backpack which was taken off him at the departure gate. I had to wait behind the line at the desk until a friend brought me my passport. I don't know what I would have done otherwise. He said airports should tell you to keep your passport with you when they take your bag. The introduction of Ryanair's new baggage policy in January, which requires anyone who does not pay for priority boarding to have their second larger hand luggage placed in the hold free of charge, means more and more travellers are falling prey. Social media is awash with flyers who realised too late that they would not be reunited with their passport until after border under control. I have to say, on the one occasion where that did happen to me, I was actually reunited with my bag on the tarmac before I went inside.
Which you should be, really, if you're handing it over at the gate. But what are the rules, Owen? Because obviously you deal with this kind of thing on a daily basis.
It would depend on airport, where you're coming from, where you're going to. So if it was domestic flight, it is possible that you could get it back on the tarmac. If it's not a domestic flight, then it needs to go into the baggage carousel. So yeah, like Nick was saying, you should be told beforehand that any passports, laptops, medication, spare lithium-ion batteries need to be removed. Maybe people don't pay huge amounts of attention to this.
I mean, there is, I
tend to be quite zoned out in airports.
Yeah,
They were
I think
inebriated.
I mean, as I say, in my case, it didn't matter because I was reunited with my bag at the tarmac. But it did suddenly dawn on me. Thought, like, if I'd have had to go and collect it from a carousel, I wouldn't have been able to do that.
But there are definitely. I mean, border control are very, very good at taking care of that sort of situation. And I know I saw it in Gatwick that they have this little kind of seating area where there are people being held for further questioning or for in case that something like this does actually happen. So that was when I went into Gatwick.
Is
they have one in Stansted.
Is that where you get the horrible noise of the snap of the gloves as they put, it's just like, time for your inspection, sir.
No.
Comments in the chat room, Mash has said that you shouldn't need to be told, it's common sense.
Yeah.
And Stephen Ivey said
yes,
that,
it is common sense, but I'm not. I'd be the first to admit that in that situation, I might think, oh, I need my tablet or I need my pills for medication or whatever, but I can't promise that I would think, oh yeah, I need my passport to get in the other way, because you once you've gone through security initially, that's like I've sort of forgotten that I've got a passport until I get the other end. I don't know. I can't promise that.
Yeah, unless you're a regular traveller, you wouldn't necessarily realise that immigration is before the baggage hall.
Yeah.
You might assume you're going to get your baggage and then go to immigration. You don't know necessarily.
Stephen Ivey just says he feels like not having your passport on your person is just asking for trouble.
Yeah. No, I know the theory. I'm just, I'm just being honest that I couldn't promise that.
And Lane Street has just said, well, it's been his experience that a large portion of the population lack common sense.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with you there either.
Lane, always the always the great comments in there.
Indeed.
But, yeah, definitely passports, any spare lithium batteries, laptops, valuables, medication, they all need to come out before you put anything like that in the hold. And the same, I suppose, goes with check luggage as well. You don't want anything like that in your check luggage if it's going to be bounced around. And from an airline's point of view, you don't want to have spare lithium-ion batteries in the hold loose.
So moving on to the next story then, and Nev, special one for you as always.
Yes, this is on the Australian Business Traveller website, and it's by Chris Chamberlain, who says that business class is a great way to travel, but on a handful of flights every day, it's the only way to fly, quite literally, because there are no first class suites on board or any seats further back in premium economy or economy. Welcome to the all business class flight, a rarity in today's skies, and amongst that handful, British Airways flagship BA1 service from London to New York, and both the flight number and the aircraft are special. In a nod to the 1980s era of high flying, this route adopts the same BA1 flight number as Concorde, another all business class jet, which darted between London and New York. These days, BA1 is flown by an Airbus A318, the tiny single-aisle jet that's certainly no Concorde, the smallest member of the Airbus A320 family, and sometimes called the baby bus. This jet is dedicated to BA's London to New York route and has just 32 business class seats across 8 rows, making for an experience which BA likens to flying in a private jet. If you're thinking that an all business class flight would feature the very latest in luxury seating, BA1 will surprise you. The seats are arranged in pairs at either side of the aisle, so there's no direct access to the aisle for the window passengers, although on the quiet Sunday morning when I flew there were just 18 passengers aboard, so most guests had a pair of seats to themselves. The seats lack many of the mod cons you'd take for granted, including personal video screens. The crew offer iPads preloaded with content, but most passengers seem to watch video on their own tablets or laptops. However, the seats do fold down into flat beds. Something else that's unique about BA1 is that it runs from London City Airport rather than Heathrow, and London City is close to the city's financial and business district, including the financial hub of Canary Wharf, which underscores BA1's corporate travel cred. Ironically, this business traveller friendly airport doesn't have any lounges. Well, actually, it does now. But BA shouts all BA1 passengers a complimentary meal at the airport's pilot's bar and kitchen restaurant, although you can take care of your own breakfast and arrive at the airport to check in for flights to New York as late as 15 minutes before departure. When it's time to board, there's no announcement in the terminal, just a few spoken words at the gate, and as everybody's in business class, there's no priority boarding lane. All the passengers simply wander to the aircraft in no great hurry. That's one more wrinkle to come, because London's City Airport's runway is very short. The A318 can't take off with the full load of fuel needed to fly all the way to New York. So BA's novel solution is a stopover route in the Irish town of Shannon. This might take the shine off notions that an all business class flight would zoom you directly from A to B, but British Airways makes it work by letting passengers clear US passport control and customs on the ground at Shannon, whilst the A318 is fueled for the 7-hour flight ahead. If you've no checked baggage, you can walk straight out of the terminal at New York's JFK Airport and make your way into the city. And if you do have a bag, because there are so few passengers on this flight, every suitcase comes out within minutes, and you're good to go. Compared to a non-stop flight, the Shannon detour does add around 90 minutes to the trip. But as a US visa holder who can't normally use the time-saving passport kiosks, having no queue at passport control compared to normal 90-minute wait for manual processing renders this a non-issue and makes the flight a very attractive way to enter the US.
Well, of course, the Shannon Airport is a fairly small airport, is it not?
Yes. Now, the people I've heard of that have done this flight have said it's quite satisfactory and it all works quite well. But BA did used to do 2 rotations. They used to have a BA3 and a BA4 later in the day, but they've scrapped those. So actually, that Sunday flight where this chap took the A318, and there was only 18 people on board the plane, even at a business class fare, makes you wonder how the load factor must work.
Well, yeah, that's true. Maybe herein lies the problem. Essentially, if they're not filling the flight, then. But I mean, as I say, because that sounds like a very appealing idea actually to me, is to literally do your passport control, if you like, in Shannon.
So you're arriving as a domestic flight,
and that's why when we were going out to New York, I went via Dublin. I went Heathrow to Dublin, and then in Dublin I passed through the US border and flew domestically into Newark, I think.
I mean, we were lucky when we went to myself, Charlotte, and Sarah. When we flew in, because we flew into Newark, we were just lucky on times. It wasn't a busy time of day to be going through passport control, and we were in and out fairly quickly. But I mean, some people were telling us on the flight that trips that they'd been on where they'd had nearly 4-hour delays sometimes trying to get through passport control.
Well, I mean, I got in the second time in February into New York, and that was the only time that I've entered America without going through pre-clearance in either Dublin or Shannon, and that took a good 90 minutes, and that was at midnight.
Wow.
The only other snag about the BA2, which is the incoming flight back to London City, because it can do it in one hit, obviously, because it's got the wind behind it, as it were. Often that flight ends up at Gatwick because of the weather at London City.
I
see. Quite foggy very often, or low visibility, so they can't land it there. So they end up back at Gatwick very often as well.
Okay. I was just trying to get a price for that flight while you were having a discussion there, but struggling to find a price from London City to.
If you can't find one, it probably suggests that you can't afford it, Carlos. I think that might be the case.
Yeah, I have to say that the advantage of doing your customs clearance at Shannon is rather taken away when you realise it's not an exclusive BA thing at all. You're quite right, Ian and Nev, when you say that there are a number of airlines that use that facility. Well, there are quite a few
you were with Aer Lingus,
American immigration officers based in Ireland to do that. So it's far from being unique to BA. I hardly think that a dumpy little 319 that can't even get to America in one hop is a suitable replacement for the BA1 call sign, but far be it from me to comment on BA's ability to get a decent airplane to hold their premier call sign. But I suppose the advantage is it's such a slow flight that you get a chance to get a decent amount of shut-eye perhaps on the way over.
I have a price.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Okay,
So, Nev, if you want to travel from London City on Monday out to New York and back, return on BA 0001 on the A318, that will set you back £3,787.
Really? Actually,
well, that's actually not bad for a business class.
Yeah.
From London to New York, quite honestly.
Actually, Tony asked a very good question there. Did they take on extra passengers at Shannon?
No, they don't. No, you've got to, if you're doing that route, you're getting on at City and then doing your customs check.
So it's literally they're refueling the aircraft. They're
not taking on.
I think it was quite attractive for people who lived and worked in the city because it's their local airport, for heaven's sake. It's right on their doorstep.
Yeah.
And they could basically walk out of work and climb an airplane, and next morning they'd be in New York ready to do whatever there. So I think the concept is good. The fact that they've dropped one of their aircraft doing this is obviously perhaps an indication of how popular it is now. And this is hardly new news. This route has been around for years. So
I know, but BA are desperate for
suddenly popped up.
It's because they're desperate for PR, you see. Because what's happening is they're now listening to Nev's passenger experiences, and what they're finding is that they haven't got the fabulous reputation they once thought they had.
Yeah.
So this may be an attempt at PR.
Well, I think that's your boss's fault, isn't it?
My bosses.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Charlotte and Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They single-handedly ruined BA.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think I heard somewhere that the BA 1, 2, 3, 4 call signs are used because door to door or office to office, this flight is just as fast as Concorde office to office.
Not really, no, because Concorde was, I know it's from Heathrow, but that was about 3 hours, 10 minutes.
Right, okay.
On the westbound sector, and under 3 hours.
If there was a bad traffic jam,
yeah.
No, that was just
get
something
on
that
a
I heard.
helicopter and go to the top of the old Pan Am building in New York from JFK as you used to in the old days. Now that might have made it a bit quicker.
Yeah, true.
An update for all of those of you in the chat room who I know are terribly concerned about Jonathan Warner's absence. I'm delighted to say that in the last 10 minutes that we've been doing this, he's gone from 21% to 24% in his Windows update. So it's going really well for him. Yeah,
excellent. So moving on to the next story, Captain Nick. This one is for you.
Oh God, I've been dreading this. Only because this is an incredibly complicated story to read, and it's in very small print. So it's an incident concerning a Vietnam A321 on the 29th of April. It was performing a flight from Ho Chi Minh City to Nha Trang in Vietnam with 203 passengers, 7 crew, and performing an RNAV approach to runway 20 at Nha Trang. An RNAV is an approach which is guided by the aircraft's own navigation system rather than being guided by beacons or a system based on the ground. It was cleared to land at Nha Trang Civil Airport on runway 20, which in the future will be called 20 right, but wasn't on that day. But touched down on the runway under construction that will in the future be called 20 left. Oh, wow. So you have to try and imagine they've got a runway there that they normally use and a runway under construction, which at the time this poor bloke landed were both called runway 20. Anyway, the aircraft landed on the wrong one. It rolled out, and during the rollout, because there was lots of stuff on the runway from the builders and various other things, it sucked in a a fair amount of foreign objects from the runway, which did it some damage. Vietnam's CAA, Civil Aviation Authority, rated the occurrence as a serious incident, suspended the flight crew, and opened up an investigation. This is from the Aviation Herald, by the way, and they received additional information contradicting earlier preliminary information of landing on runway 02, so that's just in there to confuse. Based on CAA Vietnam's statement, the aircraft performed an RNAV to runway 20 and was cleared to land on 20. According to the captain's narrative, his story, the runway was marked 20. Well, that looks good, because there should only ever be one runway marked 20 on an airport with multiple runways, and it had no crosses over it, which would normally be placed over a runway that was inactive or not to be landed on. So the crew did notice that no runway lights, including PAPIs, were active. However, that is not unusual. I've landed at New York many a time when there have been very few lights on at all, if any. So it's not unusual. That's a relatively common thing, even at airports as fancy as JFK, in inverted commas, if you can see me doing my air quotes. They only realized after touchdown that the runway was still under construction. They quickly brought the aircraft to a full stop. The charts in use did not depict the runway under construction. On May the 2nd, the Aviation Herald received information that the new runway had been put into operation for a 300-meter portion to be used by military aircraft. It had been NOTAMed in 2017 permanently. However, the NOTAM had not been forwarded to the crew. So although there was a notice to airmen out, the crew hadn't received it. In addition, the airline stated that the VVCR airport charts, so that's just the bits of paper you have with pictures of the airport and the approaches, depict unserviceable area for the construction zone of the new runway. So I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, but you can flick down to the airport map, which is Vietnam Airlines chart 10-9. You can see a nice vertical view of the layout, and this is the charts we always use to taxi around, and we also review them for landing and takeoff, so we can get an idea of what approach lighting there is, etc. And you can see the main runway quite clearly marked, but the new runway is there only in a faint hash, indicating that it is under construction and not available for use. So having flicked down there to look at that, I've now got to pre-find my spot. So although runway 2 right, 2 left was partly put into operation, a supplement had been released by the Vietnam CAA, which made it clear that the runway had not yet been renamed as necessary to become 2 left, right and 20 left, right. Now that's a huge confusion, because when you line up on a runway, it should have, for that airport, a unique number on the end, which corresponds to rounded up to the nearest 10 degrees or down to the magnetic heading of the runway. So runway 20 is approximately 200 degrees on your compass. And if you've got 2 runways that are 20, then they have to be put 20L for left and 20R for right, so that there's no confusion about which runway you're going on. And if you've got 3, then the middle one would be 20C, 20 center. Now, the CAA has now released a new NOTAM, but it was after this incident, to make pilots aware of the parallel runway that is in operation for military use. I'm looking for a sort of conclusion to this. They've got the NOTAMs there in the notes. They've got the lineup. On the approach plates, only one runway is indicated. And of course, an RNAV approach is a non-precision approach. So that approach does not take you right down to the end of the runway as an ILS, for example, would a precision approach. It takes you and dumps you basically at relatively low. The minimum for this approach, 610 feet, but that's probably 2 miles out. And from that point, you make your own way to the end of the runway. So it's not like it's taking you right to the end of the runway. It dumps you relatively high, relatively far out, and you find the end of the runway visually and then land on it. That's the way it works. So I can understand why this crew didn't land on the right runway. Certainly there's lots of mitigating circumstances. I'm not quite sure why they landed on a runway that was unlit when presumably the correct runway was lit. And according to the airport chart, there are a decent set of approach lights. Do they have PAPIs? I can't see. No, it just looks like approach lights. I can't see PAPIs. But you know, it's certainly perhaps an excusable error.
I mean, do you think this is the sort of thing which would be in an ATIS broadcast, Nick?
Yeah, it was exactly the thing that should be in an ATIS. I've no idea whether it was or not. I think if it had been, the crew probably would have been more alert to it. There's no indication of whether it's in the ATIS.
So basically a terrible breakdown in communication, I think is probably the best way to describe this incident. I mean, it's just it seems a bit harsh to be sort of suspending people left, right and centre when it's not perhaps as clear as the airport is making out.
It is usual in an incident like this to suspend the crew until the findings are out and they're exonerated, in which case they go back to work. And of course, if they're not exonerated, then, you know, but when there's a doubt, you always take the safest course of action, which is to stop the crew flying. Apart from that, you don't really want them flying with all this hanging over them while they're waiting for the results of an inquiry to come out, because their mind may well not be on the job as you know, as much as it should be.
So, moving on to the next story, and Eoin, this one is a comfy story for you.
So this is by fastcodesign.com, and it says the miserable economy airline seat got a major redesign.
Oh no.
Over the past few years, aerospace designers have introduced a slew of wildly uncomfortable looking economy seats, the latest of which is the new Cattle class airplane saddle unveiled at Hamburg's Airplane Interiors Expo. You'll be relieved to know that at least one company is trying to design a compact economy seat that is not a literal pain in the ass, but it's not as easy as it sounds. But it could make air travel a little bit better for all of us. The picture that's on the screen is not the Cattle class airplane saddle. This is the one that they have. This is the one that they're trying to, well, improve upon.
Are you subtly trying to say I've put up the wrong picture? Is that what you're trying to say?
No. I'm clarifying.
You're right. Okay, very good. Very diplomatic of you. Well done.
No, because the airplane saddle is not actually in the story. It's not. Well, a picture of it isn't anyway. The EcoSeat, which was also presented in Hamburg, shares the mission of the airplane saddle to give airlines a way to increase passenger density. But Pearson Lloyd, a London-based design studio focused on aviation, workplace, healthcare and urban environments, is aiming to maintain a fair balance between airlines and passengers. As I discovered speaking via email to co-founder and director Luke Pearson, finding that balance is a serious challenge. The studio's objective was to make passengers more comfortable and to make the cabin feel roomier while keeping the seats' weight as light and as strong as the industry demands. So here's how they did it. Pick 2, light, strong or comfortable. The matter of weight is extremely important for airlines, and the cost of fuel needed to carry a single pound can add up quickly. For instance, a single 4.5 pound laptop adds $138 in fuel per year of flight in a single plane. If, say, an average of 50 passengers bring their own laptop on Delta's fleet of 724 airplanes every day, it would cost the airline almost $5 million per year. The EcoSeat is designed around a thin carbon fiber composite shell and a central spine that provides the structural support and contains all of the seat's functional parts like the audiovisual module and the tray. Unlike the boxy flat profile of the traditional seat, the seat uses this thin curving spine to greatly reduce the volume and material of the seat, which the studio says adds an extra inch of space on either side. The contoured spine follows an ergonomic curve all the way up to the headrest, which the company claims allows for a more comfortable posture in the upright position. Our back is more contoured than most, which places the head more naturally above the body to stop it falling forward, Pearson says. Basically, it goes on to explain a little bit about the seat, but it's unlike the seat, which normally is kind of enclosed in a shell. This one just has a central column, and then the seat is kind of placed on top of that central column, in order to save space, really. And they've got tray tables and all the audio, the knock-up systems.
The knock-up that we were looking at in those pictures actually didn't look. The actual bottom pad itself didn't look that dissimilar to what we're used to now, but the bit at the back there was basically it looked like a piece of hardboard with a few, pads sort of staple gunned to it, which
it does maybe look a little bit more flimsy, but it is carbon fiber, so
yeah, true.
I still have to say one of the most comfiest economy seats I've ever sat in was definitely with Emirates.
Really?
Yeah, I thought they were really, for an economy seat, were really comfortable.
Yeah, I think the comfiest one that I've ever had was Lufthansa's A340s. Yeah, they had quite a new cabin in those, and really, really comfortable seats. Not too unlike these, really, really slim, and yeah.
Nev, do you have a sort of? I know you try to avoid flying in economy wherever is possible, of course. But I mean, is there any particular airline that jumps out at you as actually not a bad experience in economy?
Actually, SAS used to have a very nice economy seat. I used to fly them a lot into Scandinavia, Copenhagen and Stockholm, but I've not flown them for some time. I think the BA economy seat leaves a lot to be desired. It's not great, either short haul or long haul. But Lufthansa, when I have flown economy on their services, they've actually quite nice sort of lumbar support and general comfortness.
I know this is going to be a swear word as far as many people are concerned, but actually the redesigned cabin on the A320 that EasyJet use, I have to confess, I've never felt. I dare say, if you've got the tape measure out, the legroom isn't any different to any other like aircraft or rival company, but I have to say, I mean, it was one of the few aircraft, whether it's just because of the way the seat is designed slightly differently, but I could actually literally put my legs underneath the seat in front of me and stretch out, which I've never ever been able to do in any other aeroplane. And I was quite lucky because both legs of the journey were both on this recently refurbished A320. So,
of course, there is a certain person who's guest hosting with us this evening who's got the best seat in the house, really.
Well, yes, absolutely.
Well, it is on the Airbus. Of course, I hear nothing but complaints from the binliner pilots about how uncomfortable. I'm being genuine here about how uncomfortable their seats are. But yeah, the Airbus seats are okay, considering the number of hours we sit in. And bear in mind, those seats, they have someone out of the seat, not sitting in it, for about an hour a day, I guess. Because the moment we climb out, the engineers climb in and they're working on the aircraft. I'm often arriving at the aircraft, take one over. The engineers are still in our seats. They'll eventually finish what they're doing, climb out, we'll climb straight in again. So the cushions really very rarely have a chance to fluff up again, as it were.
Cool is another word I was going to go with.
Exactly. They're heavily compressed. So it's surprising how comfortable they are. But the problem I have with these seats, and that's, I'm a reasonably sized bloke, is that one size does not fit all if you're in a seat. And a big bloke like me needs a lumbar support that is suitably positioned. Otherwise, it's in totally the wrong spot. Basically, the lumbar support is down near my backside, and the hollow where your back is where my lumbar is. So I get contorted and I get dreadful back pain sitting in a seat that is designed for too short a person. Unless the headrest is movable easily, then again you end up with the headrest round the back of your neck rather than up round your head is. And of course, on a sheet like this, without any give in the cushions because they're so thin, you do raise the possibility of deep vein thrombosis, because if you get a pressure point on your legs in particular where part of the cushion cuts in, part of the seat cuts in and interrupts the blood flow in your veins, and you're on a really cramped airplane and there's not a lot of chance to get up and stretch out and get the blood moving again, you are in danger of doing yourself some damage.
Yeah, it's a good
I think that's the perfect excuse to fly business all the time.
Yeah, you're going to die if you don't. Is that
Right,
what you're
okay, I
saying
mean-
there?
That's very
it's worth
serious.
a 10 grand bill. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll run that by Gemma later. And
Yeah,
see
good
how
luck with
far I
that, sir.
get.
Yeah, good luck with that. It's been lovely knowing you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So the next story is on the nst.com website, and this one is seems to be happening all very often though. But the headline is: Man opens emergency exit door on Chinese airliner to get some fresh air. So, in Hong Kong, this was a Chinese man has been detained after he opened the emergency exit on a plane while he was waiting to disembark because he felt stuffy, according to this story here. The man, identified only by his surname as Chen, was waiting to leave the flight at Manyang Airport in the southwestern province of Sichuan when he decided he could do with some fresh air. Unfortunately for him, the handle he pulled was attached to the emergency exit, and not only did the hatch come free from the plane, but it also activated the emergency escape slide. Chen, 25, who was returning from the island of Hainan, insisted he did not know that it was an escape route, adding that because it was so stuffy and so hot on the aircraft, I just pushed down on the window handle beside me, and when the door fell out, I panicked. The crew alerted police and he was detained for 15 days for the unauthorised removal of aviation facilities. He will also be fined 70,000 yuan. Is that right? Yuan? Or 11,000 US dollars to cover the airline's costs. The airline, which has not been named in the report, said it would cooperate with the public security agencies in their investigation. They said that before each flight, flight attendants inform passengers about safety precautions, the airline stated. They also added that, in particular, passengers were made aware of emergency exits and said it needed considerable force to open them. This is the latest in a string of safety incidents in recent years involving mainland Chinese travellers opening emergency exits. In April 2016, a 30-year-old bulldozer driver who had never travelled by air before ignored warnings by cabin crew and opened the emergency exit door to get some fresh air just before his flight took off from Shenzhen Airport in the south of the country. The man who said he was worried about getting airsick was detained for a week and fined 500 yuan after the flight was delayed for an hour. The previous year, a man who claimed he thought the emergency escape handle was a handrail was given 10 days detention, and a second passenger was also given a similar sentence for opening an escape hatch while waiting to board a flight at Nanyang Airport. China's civil aviation industry has responded by imposing a slew of penalties, including flying bans in addition to existing fines on blacklisted travellers. There's a picture there, actually, Matt. I don't know whether you put that on the screen whilst I was recording. Yeah, it's I probably delayed that flight, I would imagine, quite a lot.
Well, they were saying the other one was only delayed for an hour. That is pretty impressive. Fair play to whoever was coordinating that flight.
I mean, presumably you can't just simply fold it up and put it back in the aircraft.
No,
No.
That'll ground the aircraft for the day.
What do you think of this, Nev?
Well, another great example of aviation journalism at its best. It has to mention the fact that the gentleman is a 30-year-old bulldozer driver.
Right, well, obviously, which is very relevant.
Yeah,
of course, yeah, absolutely.
You know, I reckon he was just wanted to pop out and throw some coins into the engine.
Oh, yeah, we had that. I remember that story.
This isn't too unlike the one with the passenger in Malaga earlier on or late last year. In September, October of last year.
Yeah. Is that the one that got out on the wing?
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah,
because he had asthma or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it does say that the emergency exits need considerable force to open them. I don't think that they do. From the ones that we're using in training, they're definitely pretty spring loaded, and pulling them even a little bit will activate them. That's not to say they activate in flight, because those particular ones are locked during flight, and it's only on the ground that they are open.
Perhaps the captain and the crew are being a bit stingy with the air conditioning. on this particular
a
flight.
bit stingy. Sorry, we're fresh out of air.
A bit hot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can think of better ways to cool down than opening the emergency exit door. Nick, any thoughts before we move on?
Well, no, not really. No.
Not something that Nick's going to do, I don't think.
No, okay.
Well,
no, fair.
it happens well behind where I'm sitting, so there's not a lot I can do about it. All I can do is say, well, how long will it take to fix? And
Well,
have we
that's
got
true.
a spare aeroplane?
That is true. Yeah, can I have a spare aeroplane, please? Yeah.
So next up, Ben.
Okay.
Next story is yours, Matt.
Yes, okay. I notice in the show notes here that I'm supposed to be playing out pictures and videos.
I know.
I can't do both. So we'll read the story out and see how we get on. So anyway, there's a start. Right, okay. Maybe someone else should read this, seeing as it is a stunning time-lapse footage.
Go on,
shows
Nev. It's a BA one, so Nev better read this one.
Yes, I'm sure I can. It's on the dailymail.co.uk website.
Oh, brilliant.
Of course, one of our favourites. And it says that this amazing time-lapse video reduces an 11-hour flight from London Heathrow to San Francisco to just 4 minutes.
Hang on a minute. I've got a picture of 3 dogs driving baker's vans.
Yes, that was obviously the alternative version.
I'm a bit scared.
Yes. It was filmed from the cockpit of a British Airways A380, the world's biggest passenger plane. The clip begins from Heathrow's runway 27 left and gives viewers a pilot's eye view as the enormous aircraft soars over Iceland, Greenland, and then approaches the California coast. Viewers are then treated to a view of the Golden Gate Bridge before the aircraft touches down in San Francisco. And this video has been posted to Twitter by the captain in charge of the flight, Dave Walsworth, and Dave's a senior captain at British Airways on the A380, and a very decent fella he is as well on social media, always sharing stuff, and is a great ambassador for the airline, I think.
Is he the one with the MBE?
I don't know.
Okay, because there's I know I follow one BA skipper who insists on putting MBE after his name.
That's Scott, isn't it? Yes. Yes. But anyway,
I was just about to say, if you'd been on EasyJet and done this, you'd have got fired.
Well, that's true. That is true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think he's had to have a lot of chats with BA's corporate PR team before he does all this sort of stuff.
I think in their defence, to be fair, if you could see in the top right-hand corner of the video that we're playing out at the moment, if you are watching on the YouTube feed, there is actually a GoPro essentially that's been sort of sucker-mounted to the windscreen. So he's not interfering with it, if you see what I mean, once he's taken off, to be fair. So I think that's I just want to make that very clear. It's very different to the Snapchat thing, obviously.
Also, Dave's done some nice stuff of some approaches into Johannesburg as well. I noticed that on his Twitter feed the other day. So yes, nice to see some high quality stuff there from the BA skipper.
Yeah,
definitely.
Indeed.
I think Dave also used to fly those BA 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he was an A318 captain.
Was he?
Those ones? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to keep watching this because otherwise it'll all fall silent and we'll just sit here watching this video.
It is kind of mesmerising.
It is a bit
It's
mesmerising.
really
isn't it?
amazing.
It's really good
to see.
It is good. Anyway, there we are. There's Nev.
There we go, Nick.
There's a treat for everyone.
There's your thing for your next flight, Nick. You've got to try something like that.
Oh dear.
Well, I think you'll find that link I passed earlier was something similar.
Ah.
Far be it from me to admit the fact that I have taken a time-lapse on an aircraft. I think it might have been one that I found somewhere.
Right, okay, good. That's what I like to hear.
So, Nev, carry on.
Is it my story next?
Oh, no. So,
yeah, you're right there. Yeah.
I think you'll find is it mine? This one?
Oh, yeah, go on.
Go on. Yeah,
Go
why
on
not?
then,
Yeah.
Nick. Go on then, Nick.
Yeah.
Airbus Aerial using drones for airport mapping. Oh, God, here we go. So there's a company called Airbus Aerial. They are a commercial aerial service business, and they've been launched by Airbus last year, and they recently conducted runway mapping and inspections of Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson International Airport, which those of us on the APG know well, since 2 of our presenters work there regularly. Aerial fuses satellite and drone. That's a bit unfair if you keep fusing satellites. They're very hard to fix. I think that's what they really mean to say is aerial combines satellite and drone data into custom-tailored, client-specific packages. Oh, God. I mean, this is... speak English, man. With easy-to-use interpretation tools. Airport officials requested aerial... presumably there's a 2 or something there. Oh, no, you probably get away with that. Airport officials requested aerial conduct mapping of its south runway to help it assess the benefits of using this service to conduct critical runway inspections. This is interesting. One of the big delays, so it's always a pain when you are queuing for takeoff at a lot of airports, is when they go out with their leader vehicles, the yellow 4x4s that most airports have, and they do a runway inspection because they usually takes about 5 or 10 minutes, and the vehicle has to sort of drive the length of the runway and make sure that there's nothing on the runway that could damage an aircraft taking off or landing, a la the last Concorde that Air France Concorde that flew and burst its fuel tank, caught fire, and had tragic results after it. That was because of a bit of debris that was left on a runway. So the aerial team used an autonomous FlySense EB Plus drone with RTK GPS capabilities to capture aerial images of the runway with an accuracy of less than 5 centimeters. It's fully automated and can map an entire runway in one flight with a single operator. Airbus Aerial used drone images to develop a comprehensive airport assessment report, including 3D mapping, contour layers, and traditional high-resolution imagery within Aerial's cloud-based geospatial. Spatial. Yes, that's it took me 3 goes. Thank you. Geospatial platform. The company plans to offer the service to other airports. Currently has clients in utilities, road construction, blah blah blah. This is interesting. You're obviously not going to still have to close the runway because it's a drone, and drones don't always do what you want them to do. They actually have to close the airport while you're conducting one of these surveys, because if it drifts off from the runway that it's going up and down, it could drift into the path of an aircraft on an adjacent runway, which a Land Rover probably wouldn't do. So I'm not quite sure of the advantage of this. Perhaps for specific mapping, looking for damage, but if it's just a regular runway inspection,
is it faster? Sure. I mean, is it over faster?
Well, you've still got to examine the data, so you presumably have to download and examine the data. If it could whip across there and get decent resolution images very quickly, yeah, but it's probably only going to be twice the speed of the Land Rover does. They usually go down there at about 30-40 miles an hour. This won't, I would have thought, wouldn't go much more than about 80 miles an hour. So you're not going to save a huge amount of time, I wouldn't have thought. And what's more, if it does spot something, you've got to see the data, examine it, realize that it's there's a problem. You then got to go out there and actually get it. And in the meantime, you're going to stop all operations once you realize there's something on there. Whereas a vehicle that does it, if he spots something, he just screeches to a halt, picks it up, throws it at the back, and carries on.
Yeah, that is true.
It's definitely, it's not like a conventional drone, though, is it?
No, it looks like a model aircraft, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they're calling these all drones, but that looks like a radio control airplane.
Yeah,
it does.
So moving on to the next story, and who's taking this one?
I'm not. The Runway Girl Network, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have a go at that then.
Go on
then. Okay, so this is about to be a car crash, probably. This is on the Runway Girl
Network.
Network.
Well, we'll restrain you.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. The Runway Girl Network, and the headline is "New Restraint System Addresses Airline Passenger Violence." Useful. A workplace conflict consultancy in Britain has developed a passenger restraint system which will be easier for crew to use while reducing the risk of injury to passengers. The International Air Travel Association, the IATA, reported last December that while incidents of unruly passenger behaviour are fewer than in previous years, the number of violent incidents have risen. So Total Resolve, a crisis training and de-escalation consultancy founded by former police officers, designed the new restraint to address the needs of British Airways following input from the airline about the complexities of using previous restraints. Runway Girl Network spoke to Tony Morgan and Richard Strickland, who are the founders of Total Resolve, to hear their views on the rise and risks of managing violent passenger behaviour. The causes are many, they tell us, from excessive alcohol or drug consumption to mental health issues and issues of air rage. Morgan explains that there are no easy answers. This is a will to deal with there is a will to deal with this, but there is also pressure, Morgan said. He mentions resistance to limiting the size or the sale of alcohol, politics surrounding the application of existing laws and the drafting of new ones, and the airline's push to fill seats on aircraft. I don't think anyone has come up with a really good solution. Airlines take different approaches to unruly passengers, from hands-off policies, which rely on diverting flights, to airlines which issue tasers to crew to handle security on board. Either of these extremes introduces risk, Morgan and Strickland have said. The issue we have with relying on diversions is that it will take at least 30 minutes with a violent passenger on board to deal with, and they are unrestrained, said Strickland. So British Airways will first launch the new Total Resolve quick restraint system on long-haul flights when diverting a flight to deal with a passenger incident is not an option. So it looks like basically, you know, those ratchet straps that you have in the back of your van.
Yeah.
Essentially, it looks like that's what you do. So you sort of put it behind the seat and sort of ratchet them to the seat. So
it's got a bag of stuff there. There's the picture on there shows, but there's some of the pictures on there which show the chap being restrained in a chair. There's a lot of Velcro going on.
Yeah, there is, absolutely. It's this is a bit of a funny one where it's got leg restraints and all sorts going on here, isn't it? I mean, it's everything from handcuffs to straps around each arm and all that. I mean, presumably you don't run the risk of damaging the seat by doing something like this. I mean, you'd have to be.
I don't think that's really an issue if you're talking about a disruptive passenger or a physically aggressive passenger. You're not really worried about breaking a seat.
No, true.
That's kind of the last year worries, especially if you're up in the air. You don't want to be dealing with that in the air.
So Morgan and Strickland also point out that the crew and passengers who volunteer to help open themselves up to potential liabilities, especially with more extreme measures like having to use duct tape to bind passengers to their seats, tasering passengers, or having larger passengers intervene to defend the crew. We have found that sometimes with the best intentions in the world, they introduce issues where if the individual who is being restrained dies or is injured, then there are many, many problems to look forward to. The quick strap system is designed to reduce potential injuries. Our device wouldn't go around the chest, it only goes around the arms. It doesn't form a tourniquet, he also pointed out. So in some cases, crew may use separate ankle restraints developed by Total Resolve, which can be fastened to seats to keep passengers from kicking or getting up. Morgan and Strickland believe fixed handcuffs of the type used by police in Britain can be effective as a first resort to manage violent passengers. They say plastic zip ties are more likely to cause injury and are too difficult to put on basically effectively and quickly. They have also designed soft handcuffs. Surely they're more for evening wear, but anyway, made of similar.
Let's play, ladies and gentlemen.
So I'm just looking at the chat room.
Oh right, made of similar webbing that is used on seats, which can be put on quickly, which will not injure the wrists or cut off blood flow. I'm going to stop reading the story now.
Tony S has asked in the chat room, actually, the pictures, obviously, that story, the guy in the chair. Asks whether that's Captain Al.
Oh, it might well be. I hadn't given that some thought. I mean, it's a little more thick set than Captain Al, I think, to be fair. But it's. I mean, they've got several sort of options here. It's the same thing, isn't it? Where they're restoring. See, I disagree with them. They're saying a bit of a sort of like a tourniquet effect around the arms, because actually they are going round the arms there. I mean,
but they're not going the full way around the arms.
No, true. No,
they're open at the back. So.
The thing around his wrist there looks looks like something I used to wear when I rode my bike as a kid. Yeah, one of those reflective strip things. But yes, I'm sure they're very effective. And I mean, obviously, the answer is that people don't need to be morons when they're in the aeroplane, and then none of this is required. But
very true.
There we
I don't know. I haven't seen it happen too frequently. I've been lucky, I suppose, in a way, but I haven't had.
You don't fly Jet 2 then?
No.
Okay.
There we are. The secret's out, everyone. He doesn't fly for Jet 2. Absolutely. Although I think to be fair, from the conversations that we've had when we've been, off air, when we've been talking about these issues, I think it's safe to say that you're perhaps a little bit more. But perhaps you're sort of much faster at nipping these problems in the bud earlier than perhaps some of your colleagues, maybe, or some.
Well, it depends on what the situation is. If the situation is something to do with a service issue or an issue with the cabin crew, then that's
jumping
down
on it straight away.
To how the cabin crew are going to deal with that. But if it's an issue with another passenger, that's slightly more difficult to spot or resolve as quick.
You've just I'm reading the chat room.
I'm reading comment. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
That's outrageous. What a suggestion, Nev. I thought we had nice listeners. I don't know what happened.
Well,
indeed.
So the next story is I'll take this one. Is on the Evening Standard, and headline Evening Standard is Wizz Air UK. This budget airline just became Brexit proof.
Oh no! You said the word.
Dun, dun, dun. Everyone switch off now. Anyway, one of the subsidiaries of Europe's fastest growing airline has this week been given permission to operate out of UK airports. Wizz Air UK, a subsidiary of the larger Wizz Air Holdings, has been granted an air operator certificate.
Every time you mention the word Brexit, I'm going to play this
license
music,
by the UK's Civil Aviation Authority. This will ensure the airline can continue to operate in the UK after Brexit. The new branch will begin operations May the 3rd this week out of their headquarters at London Luton's Airport, with the first flight between Luton and Bucharest, Romania. By the end of 2018, Wizz Air UK expects to have 8 new Airbus A320s and Airbus A321 aircraft, and will have created 300 new jobs. It will fly to destinations such as Larnaca, Tirana, Tallinn, Bratislava, Lviv, I think that's how you pronounce that one, Lviv, Athens, Keflavik and Bari, with fares starting as low as $13.99. Joseph Vadari, a chief executive officer at Wizz Air, said in a statement that this week marks the start of a new era in air travel in the United Kingdom as we celebrate Wizz Air UK's first flight following the approval of its UK operating licence. While Wizz Air UK is a key part of our Brexit contingency plan, it is also the first genuine ultra-low-cost carrier licensed in the UK and the natural next step in development of our UK business. That's good news anyway. At least we shan't lose Wizz Air when all things just go to pot when the Brexit thing happens.
Stop saying that word. I think we're going to move on rapidly now.
Really?
And Captain Nick, I wonder if I could trouble you to take the next story on the BBC's website.
Yes, of course. About Heathrow Airport. Rival expansion scheme revealed. So a company with a rival plan to expand Heathrow Airport has unveiled its proposals. Aurora Group, I thought that was the name of a hotel, says its plan for a new terminal and runway would cost £14.4 billion sterling, which is, in inverted commas, roughly the same as the scheme proposed by Heathrow Airport Holdings. Airlines, including the owner of British Airways, that's AOG, isn't it? No spares available. Say companies other than Heathrow's owner should be allowed to design and build any new terminals. Oh, interesting. Heathrow Airport Holdings say Aurora's plans were not serious. They show a complete lack of understanding of airport operations and disregard for those living closest to the airport, said John Holland Kay, Heathrow chief executive. If these were serious plans, they should have been submitted for public scrutiny to the Independent Airports Commission years ago, along with 50 other competitive proposals. The government is due to publish the final proposal for a third runway at Heathrow later this year, and MPs will then vote on the plans. It should have happened 20 years ago, but don't worry about that. Aurora is run by Surinder Arora, who owns several hotels and other properties near the hotel. You see, I said that, didn't I? The terminal design is part of Mr. Aurora's wider push to build an expanded airport. Last year, he also revealed plans for a third runway that he claimed would be cheaper than Heathrow's proposed scheme. Aurora's Western hub plans focus on a single area on the western side of Heathrow between Terminals 5 and the M25, which Aurora say would be cheaper and less disruptive than redevelopment around Terminals 2 and 3. Heathrow Airport has estimated that its development plan will cost $14 billion, and that's $0.4 billion less than Aurora's. But you know, these numbers do tend to change once the projects get underway. Aurora disputes that figure and says that Heathrow has not been transparent about how it came to that total. Airlines want to keep the cost of expanding Heathrow to a minimum, as the expense will be borne by both passengers and carriers. Heathrow's owners said this week it would allow companies to bid to partner with it on some aspects of the expansion scheme. Mr. Aurora welcomed that decision, but said it did not go far enough. I won't do his voice again. I'm not very good at imitating him. Heathrow has been in monopoly control for too long, and our proposal shows what can be achieved through an alternative approach, and Heathrow fully welcoming competition, he said. Sir Ron Eddington, former BA chief executive and member of Aurora's Heathrow Expansion Advisory Board, I was going to say jobs for the boys, but that may not be appropriate. Heathrow said Heathrow used to be the premium global aviation hub, but has suffered under the current monopoly. Aurora is best placed to deliver true competition and return Heathrow to its place as the top-tier international airport. A spokesman for IAG, which owns Aer Lingus and Iberia, as well as BA, said Aurora's proposal deserved to be properly evaluated. Competition at Heathrow is critical to keep costs low, and we call on the government to break up the airport's monopoly and allow third parties to run terminals. Craig Krieger, chief executive of Virgin Atlantic, said Aurora's plan appears to be a credible alternative that will bring down the cost of construction and inject competition at the UK's hub airport. Aurora's plans have been created by Corgan, an architectural firm that has designed terminals for other major airports worldwide. Interesting.
I must say, the picture that they've got on the story here, the CGI impression of Aurora's plans, it looks nice. It does look nice.
Yeah, it looks nicer than their hotels.
Indeed.
But do you think we could definitely benefit then, Nick, from an expansion at Heathrow?
I see any late player coming in on the game now as delaying the overall time it will take to put whatever happens in place. And for the saving of 0.4 billion, when you're talking between 14 and 14.4, does not seem to be a huge amount, considering we've been waiting for this third runway and we've really needed it for so long. We're desperate to have it. And the airport can't really progress without it. I mean, we're absolutely chock-up at Heathrow, bulging at the seams. It desperately needs
a small part of me wonders, actually, like with an expansion plan like this, where he's saying, you know, we might be able to save you 0.4 billion, and what's the betting that it will still go massively over budget anyway? Because that seems to be the thing with all building projects in the UK, especially. It's like basically everything always goes massively over budget. Nev, any sort of thoughts really in regard to this? I assuming you're thinking along the same lines as Nick.
Yes, we have a little saying in the industry that I work in, a little acronym which is JFDI, and I shan't tell you exactly what that means, but it means you really should get on with it. And the thing is, we've been waiting for this. Actually, I think this is the 18th year now.
Oh my goodness!
That we've been waiting for it, and of course, no decision has been made, and there's lots of stuff going on. But as Nick says, it's been bulging at the seams now for many years, and actually, ATC have done the best they can to offer the best possible flow rates into Heathrow during the peak hours, and they're coming up with all sorts of innovative ideas to do it. But at the end of the day, you have 2 runways, and that's it. So they can only do what they can do with the aircraft. And the other thing is as well, with the aircraft getting bigger, the big stuff, the A380s, and still running the 747s, obviously all the heavy metal needs more spacing behind it. So there's lots of wake turbulence considerations, and that affects flow rate. And then there's some weather lobbed into that as well. And it's very, very difficult to keep things on schedule. I'm amazed that they do as well as they do.
I mean, our visit to Nats actually really sort of highlighted the incredible sort of, I mean, they're forever looking at better ways of trying, or ways of increasing capacity in the same airspace, if you see what I mean, and taking into account, sort of like the wave flows and all that. I mean, it was just, it was a really amazing thing, and hats off to everyone at Nats and ATC Heathrow, and everything. Just trying to work out, how to make this work, as you say. I mean, they're desperate for another runway, aren't they?
Yes. And I think the thing is, it only works today when the weather's nice. The moment you get low visibility procedures going on, and that just messes up the flow rate and the holding and all the rest of it, and just has this massive, ongoing effect, like a pack of cards, really.
No, that's true.
So moving on to the last story or kind of story, Nev, what's this particular?
This is on the inews.co.uk, and it's a bit of a top 10 actually, and it says that these are the best and worst value airlines for flying short haul in 2018. EasyJet has been named the best value airline for short haul flights, leaving no frills rival Ryanair and its other competitors, including British Airways, KLM and Air France, trailing in its wake. See what they did there?
That's very good, yes.
Whilst Ryanair was found to offer customers the cheapest ticket prices on average when baggage charges, seat reservations and onboard catering were taken into account, the low-cost carrier was knocked out of the top 10 best value airlines entirely, analysis by a travel fare aggregator shows. And Skyscanner ranked the 20 most popular airlines that fly short haul from the UK across 4 key categories: baggage charges, the price of a seat reservation, the cost of onboard catering, and the average economy ticket price. EasyJet was named the best value airline overall for short-haul travel, with Germany's low-cost Eurowings taking second place. But several of the best value airlines were not low-cost. The Dutch and Swiss national carriers, KLM and Swiss, took joint third place. Germany's airline Lufthansa came sixth, and British Airways shared the 8th spot with Air France and Flybe. Completing the top 10 were the Spanish low-cost airline Vueling in 5th place, and Britain's Jet2 coming in 7th.
So this is the top 10 best value airlines overall for flying short haul. So we'll just do it for fun here. We'll start at number 10.
In at number 10. No, you have to do it right, Carlos. Have you never ever listened to Pick of the Pops?
So who's at number 10, Nev?
It's TUI Airways.
Oh, very good, very good. In at number 9. Someone.
This is Eurowings.
Okay, at number 8.
Blue Air? Who the hell are Blue Air?
It's you know the late night video collection. No, sorry. In at number 7.
It's Aer Lingus. Aer Lingus.
Okay, here comes the incoming suing. At number 6, please, Nev.
It's Norwegian, or as Carlos calls it, Norwegian.
Indeed.
No.
At number 5, it sounds like someone's going to the toilet.
It's Wizz Air.
Right. Okay, number 4, please.
Vueling Airlines.
Lovely. And number 3, please, Carlos.
And number 3 is Flybe.
Number 2, please, Nev.
And that is EasyJet.
And it is, it's the best value airline in the world ever, please, Captain Nick.
Sorry, Ryanair.
You're right. I'd have bought you a bucket if I'd known. Yes. Like, Carlos, one of these days I'm going to sit you down in front of... hello, it's getting louder. That's supposed to be going down.
What's he doing there?
Yeah.
So while Matt sorts that out, we're going to go over who exactly Blue Air
Who are Blue Air?
Because no one seems to know who Blue Air are.
Please educate me.
So Blue Air, whose call sign is Blue Messenger, founded in 2004, operate from lots of places in Europe, including Larnaca, Liverpool, Turin, Constanta.
They're a Romanian airline.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Do they fly out of Heathrow?
No, unfortunately not. No.
They do fly out of
they don't
Stansted, though,
count then.
because they do fly out of Stansted.
You've seen them,
I
yes.
frequently see them in Stansted, yeah.
They have an all-Boeing fleet they have some really
That's
new...
another reason I wouldn't fly.
I know. They have some incredibly new 737-300s. They have one of those. They also have a even newer 737-400. Moving on to the they've got some 500s, and someone had to buy them, the Dash 500s.
Okay.
And the Dash 700s as well. And they've also got some of the quite newer, the Dash 800 737s. And they've also got 12 of the 737 MAX 8s on order.
Very good.
So there we go. That's Blue Air.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next part of the show. This is Nev's Passenger Experience. While Nev's Passenger Experience is going to be playing, I'm going to be educating Carlos in how Pick of the Pops actually works, so that he doesn't do that to me mid-link ever again. So, Nev, maybe I could hand over to you, please, as you introduce a very special Nev's Passenger Experience.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Well, I often ask people to send an email or give me a shout with regard to having a chat with me about their passenger experiences. And this gentleman did just that. His name's Jan Hübner, and he comes from Berlin. And I met him down at Heathrow Terminal 5 last week. We had a very good chat, and this was the result. Hello and welcome to another in the series of Nev's Passenger Experience. Well, I've been encouraging our listeners to get in touch with me if they would like to do an interview regarding their flying experiences, and Jan Hübner from Berlin did just that, I'm pleased to say. I had the pleasure of meeting Jan at Heathrow's Terminal 5 the other day, and over a coffee we chatted about aviation in general and about the kind of flying that he does. It didn't take very long for me to realise that Jan is a serious av geek, and as you'll hear, this is a man that is prepared to spend more than a few euros in pursuit of his hobby. I began by asking Jan what brought him to Heathrow this time.
Well, actually, Heathrow is one of my preferred spots to change planes, obviously. And I'm on a trip to go plane spotting in the United States. And that's going to be taking me over British Airways.
Very nice too. Now, I'm guessing, by the way that you're dressed and looking at your gold card there, you won't be flying economy?
No, I got the pleasure flying first class on BA. And that's one of the reasons why I flew in from Bucharest, because I'm actually located in Berlin in Germany, but BA sometimes have great deals in their premium cabins. If you just look at the well-known sites like Flyer Talk or something, you find them, and they're usually not from London. There are some places either in Scotland or mainland Europe, and you get a great deal, and you got the pleasure to enjoy the great service.
Have you flown BA first class before?
Yes, I did. I think my last one was 3 years ago on the 74 from London to JFK. And obviously a couple of times in Club World. And the best flight I ever had on BA was BA1 from London City to JFK. That was fantastic. So I'm looking forward to this one again.
The BA1 is the London City, Shannon, JFK sector. How did that work in Shannon when you checked in through US immigration there?
Well, they ask you on board, or they tell you on board when you leave the plane for the refueling stop, if you have hold luggage, just go outside and wait for a couple of minutes. They have a little seating area there, and I have a nice habit going for the smoking area. So you go outside the terminal and then come back, and they have a U.S. immigration. It's like every immigration, you know, at like Heathrow or Gatwick or something, but it's staffed by the CBP, and you go there and they show you a picture on a monitor. Is this your suitcase? Yes, ma'am, it is. Okay, and they stamp your passport, ask you the usual questions. What are you doing? How long do you stay? What's the purpose of your trip? And then you're good to go. And once you're on the plane, you are basically in the United States, and you arrive at Terminal 7, and you just go out straight to the domestic sector, and off you go.
Excellent. Now, when you go to the US this time, what are you expecting to do?
Well, I'm going all the way to Honolulu, which is probably not the usual thing you would do on a long weekend with a bank holiday. And my wife looked at me and she said, yeah, okay, I understand you're doing this. How come you have fun spending 36 hours on a plane each way, just being there 48 hours? I have a nice place in the airport hotel at Honolulu, which gives me a great view to the runways. Brought my camera, brought my lenses, and gonna spend a couple of hours plane spotting. You know, you have all the exotic stuff coming in from Asia over there, which you don't see in Europe that much. And also for me, I'm an F geek, so I enjoy sitting on a plane actually for 36 hours, and also enjoying a good service, and also looking at where the differentiation is between, let's say, like BAs first and Americans first, how they do things, how other companies do things, and you can learn a lot of that.
BA's come in for a lot of stick recently, again, for lowering the quality of service and that kind of stuff. What's been your experience so far?
Well, my experience, I have to say, and just take it with a grain of salt, I haven't flown economy for the last 10 years, unfortunately, so to say. Club Europe hasn't gone much better since they changed the cabins, I have to say, unfortunately, because they had wider seats beforehand. Now with the 320 Neos, they are trying to get rid of the little table you have in between the middle seats, which I think is not the right decision to do, because that's usually where you put your glass and your water and something and stuff you have. It's very convenient. I'm not really sure if they should do away with that. And from my point of view, BA is within Europe one of the only carriers you consider a premium carrier. So in whatever travel class you're in the cabin, you should be ensured when you buy a BA ticket you got a premium service. And I'm not really sure if this buy on board stuff in Europe in economy is really in favor of them, because that makes them just another EasyJet or Ryanair or something. The premium cabins on the long haul should be improved, I have to say, because when you look at Air France, what they are doing, when you look at Lufthansa, what they are doing with the new business class and first class products, that is something BA needs to progress on.
We need to do a second interview with you, really, when you come back from the US, don't we? So you can tell us what your experience was.
If you want to, I'm really delighted to do that. And if not, if you don't find some time, I'll send you some video and some voiceover.
That'll be very good. Well, here we are sitting just at the threshold of 09 left at Heathrow, and the sun is almost coming out, I'm pleased to say. But of course, the plane spotting opportunities here at Heathrow are very limited these days, since they stopped the Queen's Building viewing area and that kind of stuff. Have you always been an av geek, Jan?
I've been an AF geek, and I have to tell you, I've been an AF geek when BA's Concorde came to Berlin-Tegel Airport the first time in the late 70s. So I was like 6 years old, and I will always go on. You know, once in aviation, always in aviation.
Does your wife understand you? Because my wife doesn't understand my fascination with it all.
I'll give you the diplomatic answer. I think she doesn't understand really deeply what aviation is all about, but she's come to the point where she lets me do my thing, I have to say.
Yeah, she wants a quiet life.
Yes. Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly. So, how long are you in the US for, Jan?
2 days.
Oh, so it's a really quick trip then, really?
Yeah, I'll be back, I think, Tuesday morning. I have to go back to work. And my colleagues, they looked at me, so when I came to the office yesterday with my carry-ons, they looked, where are you after? I'm going to Honolulu. Really? And you'll be back on Wednesday morning? Yes. You're crazy.
Have you flown on any of the newer technology aircraft, such as the A350 or the Dreamliner yet?
I've flown quite a bit on the Dreamliner because my wife's family is in Chile in South America, and we usually, well, before Air Berlin gone belly up, we usually flew Air Berlin from Berlin to JFK in business, and then further on with LATAM on the Dreamliner, which I have to say is a lovely aircraft. I really like it. You really feel the extra humidity and the cabin pressure when you land in the morning after 10-hour sector. You don't feel that dry as usually your throat and your nose would do when you're flying on old aircraft. Had no chance to fly the 350 yet because there's not so many airlines picking it up. A good friend of mine is probably having a conversion course from the 340, 600 to the 350, fingers crossed, on Lufthansa next year, so probably I have a chance to fly with him one day. 380 doesn't really is the thing for me because I think it's an ugly aircraft from the aesthetics point of view. Maybe nice from the technology, not my cup of tea. Today I'm going on the 747, which is the queen of the skies. Maybe old technology, but still nice looking aircraft.
And it's nice that BA are going to run them for the next few years too, isn't it?
Oh yes, it is. I mean, there's so little airlines that still operate the 747. I mean, everybody's retiring them. Lufthansa is keeping them on, I think, to 2025. BA is keeping them. Air France got rid of them. KLM is trying to get rid of them. United is retiring them. Delta retired them. It's still a nice plane. There's only Air China, Korean Air, and Lufthansa who got the 747-8, which is a shame. It's a nice aircraft, beautiful plane. So I'm really enjoying being on the 74 today again and keep it in my memory. Brought a good lens, brought a good camera, make some nice pictures, and they'll always be in my memories.
Well, we look forward to catching up with you when you come back, Jan, and thank you very much for talking to us today.
Thank you, Nav. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Carlos, for the great podcast you do. Always keep up the good work, and happy landings, blue skies, guys.
Find this and other great shows at the Aviation Media Network.
thevoicesinyourhead.com.
The Plain Talking UK podcast is a voluntary project that aims to keep you informed with the latest aviation-related stories from newswires across the globe.
Producing our content does cost money though. If you enjoy our show, why not help us keep on the air by making a donation towards the server and website hosting fees through PayPal. Any contributions would be greatly appreciated.
Are you an Amazon user? If so, why not do your shopping through the link on our website? There's no cost to yourself, and Amazon pay us a small referral fee on qualifying purchases.
To find out more about the show and to meet the team, take yourself to our website www.plaintalkinguk.com,
or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/plaintalkinguk, on Twitter via @plaintalkinguk, or get in touch via email on podcast@plaintalkinguk.com. Thanks for listening.
Flybe 5823, Trent Dane for 23 Manchester, Wizz Air 6X, climb flight level 210, direct to Bretlands Park. United 123, maintain 280 knots. London 2TME, turn right onto Bravo, link 21 join Alpha, hold at Mora, Speedbird 472, LOC/TME, approach runway 27 left. Follow the green stand 544.
That's enough air traffic control for today, Nat. Bedtime.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to fly a commercial passenger jet? Looked up at the sky and thought, I wish that was me? Well, now anyone has the chance to have a go at flying in a real aircraft simulator. NP Simulations and Flight Experience London, the only official Boeing licensed product of its kind in the UK, offer you the chance to fly anywhere in the world in their fixed-base Boeing 737-800 flight simulator. And that's not all. Ground School London offers many different courses for the up-and-coming pilot looking for a start in aviation. With prices starting at just £109, the sky's the limit. So for the ultimate flight simulator experience, or engaging preparatory courses, including those for schools and colleges, check out the websites at www.london.flightexperience.co.uk and www.groundsschoollondon.com, or call on 020 300 40 616. NP Simulations. Fly your dreams.
Safe to say, sterling work as always, Mr. Bones.
Oh, what an interesting chap Jan is, and it was a great chat we had with him down at Heathrow, and we'll be doing a return visit probably over Skype or something. But he's going to tell us how he got on, and it was this chap does spend an awful lot of money on his hobby. But,
yes,
he must be. Must have a very understanding wife.
Yeah, I can say there's several comments in the chat room about that. One of which they're saying actually that we need to he needs to get himself over to Farnborough so we can sort of all come and meet him. It sounds like a great thing. As sort of like as one dedicated av geek was one of the things that Liz said. Closely followed by Liz again saying that that's or as Auntie Sue would say, an aviation weirdo. I think, which is indeed where we.
He sounded like a really nice chap, Nev. That was
he is
quite nice.
Yeah, very much so. So look forward to chatting to him again in a couple of weeks' time.
Excellent.
Indeed.
So, moving on to the next part of the show then, we've got a few military stories lined up for this week. You'll be pleased to know, Mr. Warner.
That's if his update's finished, obviously.
That's if you're right. Yeah, he's now on 28%, probably 29% of his update. So, so we have got some military news stories. So, if everyone's ready.
Yes, I think we're all ready.
There
he is. Sorry, I was worried Nick had disappeared. Here we go, military.
So the first story in the military segment this week is a real sad story. Of course, this came onto the news feeds earlier on this week. And this one's on the express.co.uk website, and the headline, all 9 dead as a C-130 Hercules military aircraft crashes near Savannah, Georgia. So all 9 airmen have been killed after a military cargo plane crashed onto a highway near Savannah, Georgia. The National Guard spokesman initially said the crash had killed at least 5 people on board the plane, which was conducting a training mission when it crashed. Puerto Rican authorities have since detailed 9 people were on board the aircraft when it crashed. A local official insisted there were no survivors in the horrific incident. CCTV footage of the crash shows the transport plane nosedived into a Highway 12 close to Savannah Hilton Head International Airport. People close to the crash site said they saw the aircraft plummet to the ground before hearing a loud explosion around 11:30 a.m. local time, or 4:30 British Standard Time. And pictures from the scene taken shortly after the crash showed thick black smoke billowing from the flaming wreckage which had travelled across 2 lanes of Highway 21. Debris from the crash was scattered across both lanes of the road, and officials said it was an absolute miracle the C-130 cargo plane did not hit any cars when it smashed into the highway. An investigation has been launched to determine the cause of the crash, and the US Air Force confirmed the crash plane was from the 156th Airlift Wing, which is based in Puerto Rico. Witnesses reported hearing a loud crash followed by the explosion, and said one person said the ground shook like a bomb was going off. Motorists have been asked to avoid the area around Highway 21 and Gulfstream Road. Denver Goodwin, who works close to the crash site, told CNN it was horrible. The ground shook and all the people in the building started panicking. It was absolutely horrible. President Donald Trump tweeted to express his sympathy to the families of those killed in the crash. He said that he'd been briefed on the US C-130 Hercules cargo plane from the Puerto Rico National Guard that crashed near Savannah Hilton Head International Airport. And he said that please join me in thoughts and prayers for the victims and their families and these great men and the women of the National Guard. Savannah Hilton Head International Airport warned passengers to expect disruption to flights scheduled to depart, and that was on Wednesday afternoon. The C-130 transport plane is used by dozens of countries across the world, including the UK, and is capable of carrying up to 90 passengers or more than 20,000 kilos worth of equipment. And it's really sad. I mean, I saw when this story broke when I was at work actually this week and saw this, and yeah, it's incredibly sad to see something like this. But they have had a few incidents in the US this year so far, accidents and that, and it's horrible to see these sorts of things. But
I should just say that if you are, I'm not sure if you're interested in this sort of thing. I've decided actually not to play it out of respect for those who have lost their lives. But if you are interested in seeing the video that they mention from the CCTV, that's available on the express.co.uk, and then if you search for the C-130 crash, I'm sure you'll find it. But yeah, I sort of decided that perhaps that wasn't appropriate.
I did actually see the first time I saw it was actually today, the video, and that was you. Yeah. Well, it's on one of the investigation sites, and it does go into a real steep bank and then nosedives. Yeah, but
it does.
Yeah,
it does sort of drop, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Have you seen that one, Nick, or not?
Yeah, sadly, I took a look. It's interesting. Armando says it was a WC-130, which is the weather variant that often goes and hunts out hurricanes, that sort of thing. Yeah, the only similar incidents I've seen, not of 130s necessarily, but I'm thinking back to the 747, the cargo freighter that got airborne out of Afghanistan and nosed in when their cargo shifted. This sort of loss of control is usually something pretty dramatic like that, either a major failure of the flight controls or a major change in the center of gravity. They're pretty good. Well, they're fantastic pilots, quite honestly. The aircraft has a remarkably good safety record. It's been around for so many years and still being produced. Probably the longest military aircraft in production ever, and it's sold thousands upon thousands. So it is a really excellent workhorse. Very sad to see it go in, and even worse to have the loss of the whole crew.
Yeah, it is awful.
Moving on then to the next story, Matt. Do you want to take this one?
The next story. This is on the Telegraph, and the headline is Luftwaffe. Is that right?
Luftwaffe. Yes.
Luftwaffe. Oh, there's hope for me yet. Well done, me. Luftwaffe down to 4 combat-ready Eurofighters out of 128 as pressure builds over weak defence spending. Apparently, so only 4 of Germany's 128 Eurofighter aircraft are operational and ready for combat in the event of a crisis. It was claimed yesterday in revelations that will deepen pressure on Europe and Germany to live up to live up to its defence commitments. The remaining aircraft have been grounded by technical problems and a shortage of combat missiles, according to a report in the Spiegel magazine. The alleged problems could leave Germany unable to fulfil its NATO commitments and could weaken the alliance's air capabilities. The news came as it emerged that France will sign a deal for a 10-member coalition of the willing in June, to unite countries with the both military will and the means to act in Africa. The coalition will include the UK after Brexit, in a move which potentially undermines German desires to reboot European defence under the auspices of the European Union, with EU diplomatic sources confirming that Germany had only reluctantly accepted the initiative. On Wednesday, the German Defence Ministry confirmed that some of its Eurofighters have been affected by technical issues, but said that details of how many aircraft remain operational are classified. The problems are the latest in a series of equipment shortages in the German military, already causing concern amongst its NATO allies, but according to the Spiegel report, the situation is more serious than previously thought. Officially, the German Air Force has 82 Eurofighters available to NATO reaction forces, but the magazine claims the majority are unable to fly combat missions and can only be used for training flights. All but 10 of the fighters are suffering from serious issues with their automated systems. Cooling fluid is leaking from sensors in the wings that are supposed to detect enemy aircraft, making the sensors completely unreliable. The problem could be easily repaired, but engineers are unable to source the necessary big parts because the manufacturer has gone out of business. In addition to this, the Air Force only has enough missiles to arm 4 of the Eurofighters for combat. The armed forces are currently fulfilling all their operational obligations, a military spokesman said in a statement, but Spiegel quoted an unnamed source as claiming Germany is hiding behind the fact that there are currently no NATO operations in need of aircraft. We can say with good conscience and that large parts of our forces are ready for operations because there are no operations, the source said. Right, okay. Different. The claims came as Angela Merkel's coalition government clashed over the defence spending yesterday. Olaf Scholz, who is the finance minister, presented plans to the cabinet to increase defence spending by 2.5 billion euros over the next 3 years, but the amount fell short of the 12 billion, that's 10.5 billion pounds in sterling. The defence ministry says it needs to address equipment shortages, and Ursula von der Leyen, the defence minister, released a statement describing it as far from enough. Mrs. Merkel has come under pressure to increase military spending to meet NATO's targets of 2% of GDP, as Donald Trump calls for Europe to pay more towards the cost of its own defence. But under the plans outlined by Mr. Schulz, the German defence budget would be only 1.23% of GDP in 2022, based on current growth forecasts.
Is it safe to say, Nick, obviously because you were obviously in the Air Force many moons ago, but is it safe to say, would you say, Nick, that we're not as well protected as we were when you were behind the seat of a fast jet?
Yeah, undoubtedly. The size of the forces in Europe have shrunk, and ours have shrunk markedly. So, yeah, we had literally dozens of squadrons, and we're now down to a very few. The aircraft are more capable, but everyone's aircraft in developed countries are more capable. So all we've done is kept pace, but in absolute numbers, you know, we're a tiny fraction of the Air Force that we used to be, same in manpower. And it looks like Germany is suffering quite a lot. Now, it's interesting because when I was in the military, we used to have regular exercises run by NATO to test our ability and our equipment. And we couldn't have got away with only having 4 aircraft that were capable of being armed by real missiles, because when these exercises were run, we were required to put warloads onto all the aircraft. We were required to demonstrate their serviceability, and we were regulated by NATO referees. NATO officers would come along and mark the base on its capabilities. So you just couldn't get away with this sort of thing. But to be fair, this is only a newspaper report, and it's not confirmed by anything other than this one source, who appears to be sort of keeping himself well hidden. So it's hard to say whether this is in fact true or not.
Also, I'm going to be a little bit controversial here and mention the word Brexit for a real reason here. I know I'm going to regret this, aren't I? But I mean, one would argue, because apparently, according to this story, obviously Germany's nose is out of joint because we are essentially leaving the European Union. But I mean, we are still part of Europe. I mean, we will never not be part of Europe, if you see what I mean. The UK. Well,
more importantly, Matt, we're part of NATO. Now, NATO is a force. The European force does not include US forces.
True.
So NATO does, and it is a combined force of Europe and the US, which would be markedly stronger than any European inverted commas army that would be invented. But under that commitment to be part of NATO, you have to provide a certain level of input, a certain level of equipment. And it sounds like Germany might be falling down on their agreements here.
Well, indeed.
And what are the repercussions for Germany if they do fall short of that agreement?
I think US can go in and take them over. I think.
Right.
We've done it a couple of times before.
Right, fair enough. Okay.
Only joking.
Slightly controversial there.
Friends, I'm sure it won't come to that. I mean, it just would be a huge embarrassment for the German government, really,
Indeed,
to say that they had this commitment and are failing to keep to it, because all it means is that the other members of NATO, should it come to it, would be putting their forces in to help protect a country that's unwilling to protect itself, because it's holding back on the level of funding necessary, which would be a very sad situation.
Indeed, and also it's not something. I mean, we often sort of hear Germany sort of being sort of the ones with all the money and sort of bailing people out left, right, and centre. Certainly, as far as countries in Europe that have been struggling financially, it just seems a bit strange to have a sort of negative, if you like, story to do with Germany, specifically with their military.
I think internally they have the same problems we do, of balancing the cost of running their country against the cost of maintaining a well-equipped military.
Indeed. I think we'll move on, because that's all a bit too sensible. Absolutely.
Bring back the Spitfire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen to that.
They were much cheaper, that's for sure.
Well, that is true. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Nev, next story.
Yes, on the Forces Network website, and it says that new Typhoon simulators allow pilots to train in 4-ship formation.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, you have to.
Dodged a curveball there, sir. Keep your teeth in.
So the squadrons at RAF Lossiemouth can now train in a formation of 4 aircraft, known as a 4-ship, a formation that is essential on operations. The expansion of the Typhoon training facility at one of the RAF's busiest bases saw the installation of 2 additional emulated deployable cockpit trainers, or flight simulators, bringing the total to 4. Previously, with just 2 flight simulators, the Moray-based squadrons had to travel to RAF Coningsby to do 4 ship exercises in the simulators there, or live fly, which used valuable resources such as aircraft, fuel and support assets. Flight Lieutenant Johnny Mulhill, number 2 squadron at RAF Lossiemouth, said having to travel that distance is significant. It takes a day out, going there and coming back. Yes, it would do. So having that facility on our doorstep makes a massive difference to our flying programme and the rate and quality of the training that we can get up there. RAF Lossiemouth is currently undergoing a £132 million expansion with an additional 500 personnel due to be deployed to there. Pilots at RAF Lossiemouth defend the UK's northern airspace, and Typhoons have been scrambled to escort Russian Air Force bombers which were flying over the North Sea. That's all very interesting. Were you based at Lossie, Nick?
No, just down the road on a bit further south on the east coast, Lucas was my base. But when they ripped the runway up once, we all deployed, we deployed our squadron to Kinloss, which is right next door to Lossie. So I know the area well. I've flown into Lossie on numerous occasions. So I know, the base and the local area. It's quite fantastic up there. Some of the low flying, it's the best it's not really necessarily the best in the world, but it is beautiful. It's gorgeous up there.
Yep.
And this is actually, you may not realize just how important this kind of facility is, because when you just sit in one simulator and you're on your own and you can't really do much, you can't practice tactics, you can make individual simulator attacks, you can practice emergency procedures and practice flying just like I would as an airline pilot in a simulator, landing the aircraft and making approaches, that sort of thing. But when you can get 4 up interacting and you can effectively fly in proper formations and combine your tactics, it becomes a hugely valuable tool. To be fair, though, there are an awful lot of people out there who will be well familiar with this sort of scenario because they probably on their home PCs, they've been flying Microsoft Flight Sim, and there are plenty of organizations out there which will fly virtual air forces, and they will have been linking for years over the internet and flying multi-formations, live with each other in combined formations. So for them, it's old hat. For the Air Force to get, 4 aircraft up in that can combine, 4 simulators up that can combine is obviously very fancy. But I suspect the Air Force ones are slightly slicker, though, than most people with Microsoft Flight Sim. Although, of course, there are some notable guys out there with who've invested a lot of money into their personal stuff, and notable exceptions was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Back in January, we were obviously all down in London for the 200th, and we were all having to go in the sim.
Boing.
The Boeing, the simulator. And hands up, anyone who'd like to have a go in one of these flight sims?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I had a chance to go with the Irish Air Corps in the PC9 simulators, and they were quite cool. That was a good few hours I spent in those.
Nev, you want to have a go on one of these sims?
Oh yes, definitely. That's my kind of thing. But it must save the Air Force an awful lot of money by doing this stuff in the simulation rather than having to get real assets into the air, as they say. And it's good stuff, isn't it? Yeah, brilliant.
I remember when I was out of the Air Force before I joined the airline I worked for. I spent quite a while, I think several months, working for British Aerospace out of Wharton, doing flights for them in Tornadoes, and they had their Eurofighter simulator there, which they were using to develop the Eurofighter, which was yet to get airborne, and it was in one of these fabulous domes, and I was very impressed with it. But one of the things you had to be real careful, because you'd often be allowed in there to see it fly, and you'd be standing on the gantry just beside the cockpit. It's very easy because of the illusion of movement that an entirely encompassing dome gives you to fall off, because as the world tilted, you would tilt until you actually topple off the side, because you're only standing on a kind of a sort of walkway beside the simulator, and they had to make you hold on. You had to hold on very tight to the handrails so didn't fall over because the illusion of movement was so strong.
So the last story then in the military segment then, Nick, do you want to take this one, all about the...
This is all about the very special MB1 Bremont watch, worth almost dying for. What a headline, eh? I guess you must have shares in this company, Matt and Carlos?
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Yeah,
okay.
Hundreds of these.
Seems to be one huge advert. Some folks get a fancy watch for serving 25 years in the same company. Others get one for being fired out of a plane via a Martin Baker ejector seat. Jim Bernthal is one of the latter. And recently he put his Bremont Martin Baker Special Edition MB1 up for sale. Among the British watchmakers, many military commissions and partnerships, which include the U-2, designed for and tested by pilots flying the high-altitude Lockheed U-2 surveillance aircraft. The first model of its Martin Baker MB series is offered for sale only to pilots who have survived the traumatizing experience of ejecting from a jet. So the only thing you get for free is a tie. If you want to have the watch, you have to apply to, this is me speaking, not them, you have to apply to the watch manufacturer with the correct number of your ejection and the documentation, and then they will sell you one of these. For collectors of aviation watches, this sale by Crown and Caliber represents a rare opportunity to join one of the most exclusive watch owner clubs out there without first having to stare death in the face. Mr. Bernthal, then a U.S. Marine Corps flight instructor, bought his MB1 after a fateful day in March 2008 at Mississippi's Naval Air Station Meridian. Weather conditions were so adverse that he had expected the T-45 Goshawk which I might say is a British designed aircraft, a single engine tandem seat fighter, he anticipated flying in as supervisor on a training mission to be grounded. Given the talent of his trainee and the relative straightforwardness of the expected maneuver, a coordinated in-flight meeting of two jets separated by a mere 1,000 feet all proceeded as planned. Mr. Bernthal says it wasn't until landing time that things started to get hairy. At first I thought my student was just fighting some crosswind, so I wasn't all that worried, he said, given the layer of fog that had been draping the runway for takeoff. A legal divert, basically a backup plan, had been set up just in case. Then things got worse. Mr. Bernthal was forced to grab the controls and bring the T-45 back airborne as it began skating off the runway. Circling around, it became clear that the jet's electronics were failing to acknowledge the plane's proximity to the ground, amongst other issues. As they began to touch down again, they encountered a further lack of braking and control. Mr. Bernthal had just one option: reach for the bright yellow and black handle of the Martin Baker ejector seat before the jet would be torn apart in the forest that lay ahead. While his student landed without injury, Mr. Bernthal did not. The thrust from an ejector seat imposes between 14 and 16 Gs on the human spine, and causes 1 in 3 ejection survivors to suffer a broken back. It goes on a wee bit. He does say, though, that selling this watch is very bittersweet. Mr. Bernthal considers the token a celebration of life because he was given a second chance to live. The MB1 is instantly recognizable by its bright red case barrel, yellow second hand, and full Martin Baker logo on the black dial. Inside, the same self-winding chronometer certified caliber equipment power it. Unlike other models, the MB series has case hardened steel inscribed with the date of the ejection, March the 4th, 2008, and his initials, JPB, and the Martin Baker Tie Club membership, 5575, assigned by MB after entry to a club nobody intended to join. They estimate it'll be it's worth £55,000 for the person who is going to buy it. No, sorry, dollars, US dollars.
Wow. It's still a lovely, it's a beautiful watch, though, I'll have to say. Even though
it is. Breitling and Bremont both make lovely aviators watches. The Bremont is very distinctive, but it does have a lot of links with various military units, and you know, they do one with a Phantom on, they do one with a Tornado F3 on, but I've never been able to find the Sponduli to go out and get one.
No. Is that sort of something you've always wanted to sort of?
One of these watches?
Yeah.
I hope Nick's not wanting one of these watches.
No, well, no.
Well,
I wouldn't. I'd quite like a Bremont. Yeah, they're lovely. Someone fancies buying me one. I don't really want to have to climb into an ejector seat.
Right, okay.
Particular version. Yeah. But you can get an extremely similar one, looking one, obviously without the identifying marks that the Martin Baker version does. Just by writing to them and saying that you're part of a squadron, you like one of the military ones.
So as Carlos started to allude there, it is sort of time to sort of bring things to a close, unfortunately. Yeah. I should just say, actually, we've got a couple of pieces that Armando took for us when he was at the GA show a couple of weeks back, which we're going to play out next week. So,
so you got those to look forward to.
Yeah, got those to look forward to, but it was great. But
so before we wrap up then, Nick, obviously you've been off the out of the flying club for a little while. Are you looking forward to getting back in the hot seat?
Of course, I'd love to make some money. It's right. I'm only joking. They are still paying me. Thank you very much to my company. Yeah, of course. I do miss my flying. I don't miss some of the long hours. I don't miss some of the antisocial bits of it. But the pure joy of getting an airplane and flying it, one I don't think we're ever going to miss that sort of thing. I only have about a month now before I can reapply to the CAA to get my medical unsuspended, and once that is done, I'll be on. I've got a simulator coming up on the weekend, not this weekend, next weekend, and that will bring me current on the 340. My simulator currency is right on the 330, but I've got to do a day on the 340. And then it's just a matter of waiting for all the doctors to have their way with me. So
well, there's a treat. Yeah, some
gloves at the ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's hope they warm them for you.
Well, for those of you who do subscribe to the APG and our Patreons, I put a little Patreon crew log about my latest medical escapade, which involved pounding along on a treadmill whilst being wired up to every gauge that you can possibly think of.
That science has invented, yes.
And that was just so he could hit V1.
Yeah, well, of course, absolutely.
There you go.
Indeed. Okay, so for those of you who have perhaps been stuck in a tunnel and have never heard of the legendary APG, how do they find out all about your show, which I believe is coming up in 16 minutes and 59 seconds time?
Well, yeah, I believe we're going to be going. I was probably starting around 10 o'clock UK time. By the way, BST is British Summertime. I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay.
Carlos.
Yes, I know. It's been a long week. It's been a long week. It's been a long week.
Yeah.
So you can find our website at airlinepilotguy.com. You can find us on Twitter if you address us as APG Crew. We're on Facebook / Airline Pilot Guy, and we also have a Slack account, but I think you best listen to the show and Hilal will explain to you how to get involved with that.
Indeed.
So we're around, and of course my personal contribution, particular contribution to the show, The Plain Tales I Tell, has now come out as a separate podcast.
It is.
You can subscribe to it through iTunes, and of course, if any of your lovely listeners enjoys it, then please feel free to leave a nice 5-star review. I'd be most appreciative, because it does help improve the visibility of Plain Tales and of course APG. And the stories stretch back quite a way. There's well over 100 individual stories there, and Captain Jeff has just uploaded to me the last few to get it right up to date, and every single story I've ever done will then be on. I've got to just add a few notes and a few pictures, and they will all be available in a couple of days on both our website and on iTunes.
Fantastic.
And don't forget, if you want to find us, we are on planetalkinguk.com. One of the latest people to have a T-shirt, Ray Davis, he received his this week in incredibly
very
fast time.
For Royal Mail, yes, very good.
In 1 week from sending from the UK. Yeah. So Ray Davis has got his T-shirt, and they're both off to the Wings over Illawarra air show this weekend.
Indeed. Nev, if they want to get in touch with our show, how do they go about doing that?
Yes, that's podcast at planetalkinguk.com. And if you are a listener or a viewer and you'd like to have a chat with me about your passenger experience, that's the place to do it, and I'll be in touch with you.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's facebook.com/planetalkinguk.
Why does Nev look like he's in a horror movie?
We're not sure. It's got a bit dark in the Nev Tech studio. You're not outside
my
again.
Normal lighting here today, because I was so late in preparing for the show.
I was waiting for the I see a little silhouette.
No, stop it. Stop it. We're not paying PRS. It's fine. But so it's facebook.com/planetalkinguk, and our Twitter handle is at planetalkinguk if you want to find us on Twitter. I hope everybody's been good children and changed their passwords with Twitter today. If you haven't done so, you probably may or may not be aware that there's been a little bit of a problem with Twitter, and everybody's being recommended to change their passwords. It's a little bit, public service announcement. If you are a Twitter user, changing of your password is highly recommended.
I did see that email and I put it into the spam folder.
Did you? Right.
Put it in the spam folder.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're going to say a big thank you to all the listeners who've joined us this evening via YouTube and watching the live show. Big thanks to everyone and all you guys and girls out there who've taken time out of your Friday to watch tonight's show. Don't forget, you can also download the show as an audio podcast via iTunes and Spotify and Podbean and all the other amazing podcast apps
what
as
was
well.
it? There's all sorts of
Pod
things.
thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So big thanks to all you guys and girls who download the show as an audio show as well. And don't forget, send us some feedback.
Do please,
So a big thanks we'll say first in the studio to Eoin for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yes,
Thanks for having
nice.
me. It's been
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's been a while.
We're off to the races tomorrow, aren't we?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we're off to the GG. So if anyone's got any tips for Newmarket at the Rowley Mile tomorrow, I'll be eternally grateful.
Don't bet.
Hey, now that's not sporting, Nick. I'm very disappointed.
No, running a marathon, that's sporting.
Okay, right.
I'm knackered already. And also a big thanks also to Nick for joining us this evening as well. Thank you, Nick.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for having me on your fantastic show.
You're mentioning the word marathon. Of course, Nick's now got to do APG after this, so he really is doing a.
And that's a true marathon.
That is a proper marathon. That is.
It's only 3 hours.
Yes,
this is short haul.
Absolutely.
And
I
also a massive thanks as well, not forgetting the awesome guy that is Neville Bounds. Thanks, Nev, for joining us this evening.
Very nice. Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I hope everybody has a nice, a long bank holiday weekend if you're in the UK. And look forward to seeing you next week.
I'm having a barbecue.
Well, you've got the weather for it this time round for a change.
Absolutely, it's going to be lovely.
I reckon Nev's going to be polishing his banana this weekend.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, very high possibility of that, actually.
See if we can straighten it out.
Yeah, well, there is that. Oh dear, it's all right. It's all got a bit hysterical in the studio here, so I think we should hurry up and pull the plug. Anybody doing anything exciting over the bank holiday weekend?
I'm going to Heathrow tomorrow.
Are you right? Oh, right.
Control Tower, yes.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Exciting. Owen, doing anything exciting over the bank holiday? Oh no, you're working.
I'm
Maybe
flying
not.
up Marseille, Lille tomorrow, and then Dublin, I think.
Oh,
possibly.
Yeah. Okay, very exciting.
Maybe something else.
So Nev's polishing his banana. We've discussed that already.
Yes, I'm doing banana management
Excellent.
and gardening and trying to book a flight to Las Vegas.
Yes, and good luck with that one. So that sounds like you've got your hands full there.
Are they all related?
No, it could be a story.
It could well be, absolutely.
Liz Piper's put about the banana polishing thing before his wedding, Carlos.
Yes.
Anyway. I think that'll be the tagline for tonight's show.
What was that? Say that again out loud so I remember it.
Polishing Nev's banana.
I'm not putting that as the show title. I'm not putting that as the show title.
Well, Nev's gone after dark already.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Very dark.
Indeed. Anyway, on that bombshell, it's time to end. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us as order. As I thank you very much to all those who very kindly download the show every week as well. We will be back, I presume, next Friday. What's the matter with you lot?
Oh, the chat room.
Okay,
anyway,
all right. Yeah, we'll be back next week. So until then, from all of us here online and around the world, everybody say goodbye.